Most people think wars start with speeches. They don't. They start with movement, quiet movement, at hours nobody watches. Because the first signal usually isn't a headline, it's a flight. Not a dramatic one, not a passenger plane filled with tourists, just a normal aircraft taking off at a strange time on a strange path. And if you don't look for it, you'll never see it. But once you notice it, you can't unsee it. It begins with one detail, a night flight that doesn't match the pattern, a route that bends when it should be straight, a departure that happens after midnight when most systems are supposed to be sleeping. And the strangest part is this, the world still looks normal. The roads are quiet, the news is quiet, your phone doesn't buzz, but above you, the sky is working, not loudly, just efficiently. At first, you assume it's nothing. A delayed schedule, a cargo reposition, a maintenance route, something routine. But then you see another one. Different aircraft, same time window, a different direction, but the same behavior. Short takeoff time, long distance, no public noise. And if you track it over multiple nights, a shape begins to form. Not a story, a pattern. And patterns don't show up by accident. They show up when a system shifts into a different mode, a mode the public doesn't need to understand, a mode the public isn't invited into. Because in normal life, movement is visible. Flights follow predictable cycles, routes follow predictable corridors, cargo follows predictable demand. But during preparation, systems stop optimizing for convenience. They start optimizing for speed. That's the pattern. Here's what makes night flights different. They don't have to look impressive, they just have to happen. They happen when fewer people are watching, when air traffic is lighter, when ground operations can move without delays. And when you're moving something important, you don't want attention, you want time. The first things that change aren't the planes themselves, it's the behavior around them. Flights cluster into tight windows, routes begin to shift, some paths stop appearing altogether. And the strange part is that nothing looks broken. Everything still works. It just works differently. That's why most people miss it, because we're trained to notice chaos. We look for explosions, for sirens, for breaking news alerts. But these signals don't arrive as chaos. They arrive as efficiency. They arrive as normal systems acting slightly unnatural. And history has its echoes. People have claimed to notice unusual air activity before major military operations for decades, not because the sky predicts anything, but because operations need logistics, and logistics always leaves footprints, even when nobody is supposed to see them. And once a system starts moving at night, it rarely happens for no reason, because night flights aren't random, they're a choice. And choices like that usually come from one place, a schedule that changed before the world was told. The real signal isn't the aircraft, it's the coordination. Because planes don't decide to move, people do. And when a large system prepares for something serious, it doesn't announce itself, it rearranges, quietly. That's why night flights matter. They're not an event, they're the support structure behind an event. A decision doesn't travel through the air, the preparation does. The fuel being positioned, the cargo being loaded, the equipment being staged, the personnel moving into place, and the timing, because timing is everything. Night movement reduces friction. Fewer eyes, fewer delays, faster turnaround. Everything becomes smoother. And when something becomes smoother overnight, it usually means pressure exists somewhere else. Pressure you can't see. This is where the pattern gets uncomfortable, because you start noticing how the system behaves when it's under stress. Not dramatic stress, operational stress. The kind where nothing is down, but everything feels tightened. Here's what that looks like. Flights that normally spread across the day compress into a smaller window. Routes that normally look clean start bending. Aircraft that normally appear consistently become irregular. And the public sees none of it because the public isn't watching flight past at 2 a.m. The public is watching headlines. But headlines come last. They always come last. Because headlines are explanations. Signals come before explanations. And the sky is one of the easiest places for signals to hide, in plain sight. There's another reason this pattern repeats. Because human attention is predictable. We focus on what's loud. We ignore what's quiet. We notice explosions. We don't notice logistics. But if you want to understand how major operations begin, you don't watch speeches. You watch systems. You watch what stays awake, what moves at night, what changes tempo. Because systems don't panic. They adjust. And adjustments leave a trail, even when nobody says a word. That's why you'll often see other signals nearby, too. Lights staying on longer than usual, overnight activity around certain hubs, supply routes changing their timing, a normal world running on a different clock. And once a system starts running on a different clock, people adapt, quietly. They don't call it a warning. They call it weird. They call it random. They scroll past it, until later, when the explanation finally arrives and the pattern suddenly makes sense in reverse. This isn't a prediction, it's a signal. And once you learn the shape, you start seeing it everywhere. This isn't a prediction, it's a signal. And signals don't ask for permission.